ago we have discussed this in some detail, but I want to go a little bit further this morning with this concept and this paradigm, because I believe that it's important to understand that what God is into is process. Process is ultimately God's strategy, His design, and how God works out His plan in human life. Therefore, what He does is He decides to demonstrate Himself in a way that man can understand it. And the way that man is able to understand this is with this particular allegory or analogy, metaphor. And this metaphor is that God becomes the winemaker that is ultimately transitioning people through process. Transformation happens through process. Interesting that Jesus Christ, at His final hour, the moment that He is arrested, before He is arrested rather, and taken into custody, has one last meal with His 12 disciples. And at this particular meal, He takes a cup that has the substance in it called wine. Now, this is important because wine didn't just appear at this particular moment. But what had happened was that there were seeds that were planted. The seeds turned into grapes. The grapes were then crushed and extracted the juice from, and then now we have the substance called wine. In the process of all of this, it is also important to understand that He did not partake, He did not drink, He did not satisfy Himself with the very wine that He had given to His 12 disciples. This is important because what it says is that He literally tells the disciples, I will not drink of the cup until I return. I cannot drink with you at this particular moment, but I will when I return. This is important because what it says is there are grapes in life that God has still yet to harvest. There are still some bitter grapes on the vine. There are still some immature grapes on the vine that He's trying to work through process to bring them to fruition, to bring the sweet juices that He has placed inside of them out of them. More importantly, the very first miracle that Jesus ever performs is not opening deaf ears, nor is it opening blind eyes, nor is it raising dead folk from the ground. The very first miracle that Jesus ever performs in life is turning the bitter waters of Canaan into the sweet water of wine. That was His first miracle. That's important because what we have to understand is that God is radical. He's radical. He's radical about this thing. He wants you to understand that you, my brothers and sisters, are the seedlings that are being transitioned into being the grapes on His vineyard that He will pluck and one day harvest and taste and see that the Lord is good. More importantly, I have only really come to talk to folks this morning with this particular radical kind of mind. Folks that are tired of naming and claiming and praying and decreeing about stuff that you already should be possessing. This morning, I've only come to talk to people who really have been fed up in their spirit, and they've come to this particular place where they're saying enough is enough. I've come into this particular hour and I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and let's get down to business. Because I need my life to start functioning. I need something better than what I have at my expense right now. Please understand that when God gives you new vision, that is new opportunity. And at this particular opportunity that God has been given, or God has given to you, the very first thing that you should do is be excited that you have the opportunity to wave goodbye to past challenges. That should be the very first thing that comes to your mind, is that you have the opportunity to excuse, to say goodbye, to wave bye-bye, to tell them peace out, to everything that has challenged you, so that you can reaffirm, rededicate, realign with what it is that you're supposed to do. God's realignment and reshaping is ultimately trying to bring out the destiny that He has for you. And interesting as it is, many of us know friends, family members, and etc., colleagues who did not wake up this morning with their mind to come to church. Not just an 8 o'clock in the morning service, but they don't have a mind to go to anybody's service this morning. They are still asleep. Some folk ain't even made it to the bed yet because they just getting in from the club. They were out all last night in the club doing the hokey poke, making it rain, doing all that kind of stuff. And folk were stepping on their shoes, blowing hot stank breath in their face. They were sweating. They was getting down with it. Smoking and doing all kind of stuff. Use your imagination. You know what they were doing. And the miracle is that you decided on purpose to wake up this morning and come to the house of the Lord. Now let me pause here for you. Let me pause right here, because what I just said is a miracle in and of itself. For some of us, we never had the mind. If you would have told us 6-7 years ago that we would be waking up to come to an 8 o'clock in the morning service, and we would come in here with our minds stayed on Jesus, we wouldn't have believed you if you told us it was the truth. For some of us, all we really need is one flashback of where we were in our life. Just one picture, one little picture that where we can see where we were, and then we really understand how far we've come from where we were. And what I've learned about this particular place of process is if you're going to go through the motions of process, then you should allow process to work itself out in you. Listen to what I got to tell you here. Here it is. To wake up to come to an 8 o'clock in the morning service, to be entertained is insane. That's insanity, okay? To get up out your bed, put on some clothes, come up in here and sit next to folk that you may not really get along with, and you still don't walk out of here feeling different is insane. To come up in here and not be transformed in your spirit, but to come in here and put on is insane. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. Can I tell you, one of the most insane things that I have ever witnessed in my life is church itself. Church is insane. It is so insane that folk would wake up Sunday after Sunday, come in here Tuesday after Tuesday, and expect God to do something, and nothing is happening. Nothing is changing in them. Nothing is being demonstrated with them. And yet they come in here out of tradition. Can I talk about tradition this morning? Tradition, when it is a relationship to relationship, is insane, because what I'm finding about God is that it is not through the tradition that I find out the revelation that he has with me. It is only through relationship that I find out what God has for me. Therefore, the power of God is not limited just to coming in the building. That is not the true power to know God. Just that you woke up this morning and you came in this room. That's not the real power in and of itself. The real power of God is when you allow what happened in the room to transpire in your room. That's the real blessing. That's the real power, because what has happened is you have now had a new attitude, a new mind adjustment, a new mindset. And with this, you have a new disposition, a new advantage, a new perspective, and there is nothing that you cannot face in life. What I found out with my own self, may not be your testimony, but this is definitely mine. The problem with so much of me has little to do with where I am in life, but it has to do with every way I look at where I am. Let me run that back by you one more time. The problem that some of us have is not where we are. That's not the problem in and of itself. That's not the real problem. That's not the totality of the problem. In fact, that's probably not the real heart of the problem. The real problem is how you look at where you are. Because if you start to look at where you are pejoratively, if you look at where you are negatively, then negative is going to be the outcome. But if you can look at your storm and see the optimism in Christ Jesus in the storm with you, then you can do just like the Hebrew boys and say, "O King, we still can't bow, because the God I serve is able to deliver us from the fiery furnace." More interestingly, Jesus is speaking metaphorically, and he uses an illustration here. And this is really what I want to talk about for the rest of my time here, is I want to talk about this illustration of new wine. New wine. Jesus is so careful that he demonstrates it. He talks about it in great detail, and he uses an illustrated sermon to understand its principle. He wants his disciples and those that are around him to understand this paradigm, because it's going to be pivotal to where God is getting ready to take them. What he says is that you cannot pour new wine into an old bottle or old wineskin, because what happens is the bottle will break. It will burst. Ultimately, it will be wasted. It will be spilled.